Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The void erupted in blinding light, pale purple energy beams tearing through the darkness as the survey ship Aurora Dawn shuddered violently under a relentless barrage of cannon fire. Emergency lights bathed the metal corridors in a pulsing red glow, flickering like the heartbeat of a dying creature. Dr. Caleb Monroe, a planetary geologist, clung to a control panel, his feet slipping on the tilting floor, the groaning of metal blending with the piercing wail of alarm sirens. Sweat streamed down his forehead, his heart pounding in his chest as if it might shatter his ribs. "Hull breaches in sectors 3, 5, and 7. The AI's emotionless voice blared through the speakers, cold and detached amid the chaos. "All personnel, evacuate immediately!" Caleb stumbled toward the escape pods, his trembling hands abandoning the rare mineral samples, months of meticulous research from the Epsilon 9 asteroid belt. They were humanity's hope for a dying Earth starved of energy, but now that hope was meaningless. Another explosion rocked the ship, throwing him against a frigid metal wall. Pain seared through his arm, but he gritted his teeth, survival instinct driving him forward. His mind was a storm, images of his crew flashing like shattered glass. Mara, the chief engineer with her optimistic smile and bright eyes, had been in the engine room when the first attack hit. "Mara! Someone, respond!" He shouted into his comm, his voice breaking through smoke and adrenaline, but only cold static answered. They weren't warriors. They were scientists, sent to a supposedly neutral sector to mine minerals that could revolutionize renewable energy. Epsilon 9, with its glittering gem-like asteroids, had been a symbol of interspecies peace, a place where humans and other civilizations signed treaties to avoid conflict. But now, neutrality was a lie, torn apart by the flames of war. Caleb stumbled as another explosion shook the corridor, metal shards whistling past his head. He grabbed a handrail, pulling himself up, his breath ragged. Through a small porthole, he glimpsed the attackers, sleek warships, glowing with pale purple light, moving like predators in the dark. They bore the insignia of the Voryn, creatures infamous for their metallic skin, deadly membranous wings, and ruthless brutality. They were expanding their territory, defying every treaty, and Aurora Dawn was just prey in their sights. Caleb dove into an escape pod, his shaking fingers slamming the launch button. The metal door hissed shut behind him, severing him from the dying ship. "Final pod departing!" he reported through the comm, his voice cracking with dust and despair. "Is anyone still on board? Please respond." Only chilling silence answered, as if the universe had swallowed all sound. The pod jolted violently as it detached from Aurora Dawn, its engines roaring in a desperate bid to carry him from the razor's edge between life and death. Through the small window, Caleb saw the ship's final moment, the research core exploding in a silent flare of light, consuming 32 lives, Mara, his crew, their dreams of a sustainable future, all erased in the void. The escape pod hurtled through space, carrying Caleb, now alone in the infinite darkness of the cosmos. He gripped the armrests, his breath ragged, eyes blurred with smoke and tears. He wasn't a hero, not a soldier. He was just a scientist, a man who believed knowledge could change the world. But now, his world had collapsed, leaving him with only a damaged escape pod and an unspeakable grief. Through the window, the Voryn warships lingered, like specters in a nightmare, their pale purple engine glow illuminating the pod, mocking his fragile survival. The pod shook violently, navigation systems failing. Caleb lunged for the controls, his trembling hands trying to stabilize the trajectory, but the buttons were unresponsive, the screens flashing red warnings. A small, unnamed planet loomed through the window, a dusty rock with a thin atmosphere, his only hope. But the pod wasn't designed for a safe landing. Engines screamed, smoke poured from the seams, and the ground rushed up with terrifying speed. Caleb tightened his harness, closed his eyes, Mara's final smile flashing through his mind. The impact came like a roar of fate, metal tearing apart in a cacophony of pain that engulfed his body. Then darkness swallowed everything, and Caleb Monroe fell into the void, unsure if he would wake or drift forever in the universe's eternal sleep. The escape pod shuddered violently, like a wounded beast plunging into the atmosphere of a nearby planet. Red warning lights flashed on the control panel, each beep a dagger to Caleb Monroe's fading hope. He tried to adjust the trajectory, fingers fumbling over unresponsive buttons, the screech of failing systems, and the acrid smell of burning metal filling the air. Through the small window, the planet emerged, a barren rock studded with jagged mountains, cloaked in a thin gray atmosphere. It was his only chance at survival, but it could also be his grave. Caleb tightened his harness, breath ragged, his mind flashing to the Aurora Dawn exploding in the void, taking 32 crewmates, taking Mara. The ground rushed up at horrifying speed, jagged rocks like the teeth of a colossal monster. The impact hit with a scream of tearing metal, the roar of disintegrating engines, and pain exploded through his body, as if every bone had shattered. Then darkness consumed all, pulling Caleb into a cold, empty abyss. When consciousness returned, Caleb felt sharp pain radiating through his chest, each breath like a knife slicing into his ribs. He opened his eyes to a strange blue glow illuminating rough stone walls, sparkling as if embedded with tiny gems. This wasn't the escape pod, not the cold metal of human technology, but a natural cave, damp and heavy with the scent of earth mixed with something metallic, indefinable. He tried to move, but his body protested, a searing pain shooting down his arm. Looking down, he saw his chest and arm wounds bandaged with an odd material, not fabric, but a thin, organic membrane, faintly shimmering in the light. Who had done this? And why? Caleb forced himself to sit up, but a deep, resonant voice cut through. "Don't move." The tone was unlike any language he'd heard, melodic yet cold, like wind whistling through a metal cavern. Caleb turned his head, and his blood ran cold. Standing at the cave's entrance was a creature from humanity's worst nightmares, towering, at least 2 meters tall, with metallic skin that gleamed like liquid steel, reflecting the blue light in mesmerizing streaks. Golden eyes, like molten forges, bored into him with sharp, terrifying intelligence. Sharp veins ran across an angular face, as if carved by a merciless artisan. Behind it, thin membranous wings, folded but faintly trembling, emitted a soft whisper like rustling leaves. A Voryn. The species that destroyed Aurora Dawn, that killed Mara and his crew. Fear and rage surged, and Caleb scrambled back, his hand groping the cold stone floor. His fingers closed around a sharp rock, gripping it like a final lifeline. "Stay back!" he growled, voice hoarse with pain and hatred. The creature tilted its head, golden eyes unblinking, its gaze an impenetrable wall. Slowly it placed a water flask on the stone floor between them, then stepped back, its movements cautious but deliberate, as if calming a wild animal. "If I wanted you dead, human, you wouldn't have woken." Its voice rang out, calm but with a chilling certainty that made Caleb shudder. "You were gravely injured when your pod crashed. 3 days have passed." 3 days? Caleb tightened his grip on the rock, his mind reeling. 3 days in the hands of a Voryn? Every report he'd read, every horror story about this species, painted them as ruthless predators, merciless, viewing other races as prey or resources. So why was he still alive? "Why save me?" he asked, voice trembling with pain and suspicion, eyes locked on the creature. It stepped closer, each movement graceful yet powerful, like a predator in complete control. It knelt, keeping just out of his reach, its wings trembling faintly, whispering like leaves. "Because life is rare, easily extinguished," it said, its voice carrying a near philosophical weight, though its eyes remained cold. "And because you may be useful. Those who destroyed your ship are hunting on this planet. They'll find your pod soon, and if they find you, you won't survive." Caleb blinked, grappling with its words. Useful? Useful to whom, for what? He wanted to resist, to hurl the rock at it, but the burning thirst in his throat forced him to reconsider. Reluctantly, he reached for the flask, still clutching the rock, ready to react. The water was cool, strangely pure, soothing his throat like a balm. He lowered the rock slightly, but stayed wary. "What's your name?" he asked, voice less tense but still laced with suspicion. I am Sylra, the creature replied, the name spoken with a melodic cadence human throats could scarcely mimic. And you? Caleb hesitated, then answered, voice tinged with bitterness. Caleb Monroe, planetary geologist. He gave a hollow laugh. I was studying minerals to save Earth. Turns out, I landed in the middle of a war I don't understand. Sylra tilted her head, golden eyes glinting with something, curiosity or mockery, he couldn't tell. War doesn't ask permission of those it ensnares, she said evenly. But if you want to live, you must choose allies, whoever they are. Caleb studied her, realizing for the first time that she wasn't just an enemy. Something in her stance, her words, hinted at a restrained pride, like a warrior cast into shadow by fate. And in that moment, amid pain and doubt, Caleb felt a fragile spark of hope, that perhaps, on this alien world, he wasn't entirely alone. A low, rumbling sound, like steady thunder, shattered the cave's silence, startling Caleb Monroe as pain from his broken ribs flared like fire. Sylra, the Voryn warrior with shimmering metallic skin, tensed instantly, her thin membranous wings flaring slightly by instinct, trembling in the damp air. She darted to the cave's entrance, her golden eyes sweeping the darkness, sharp as a blade. They're here, she said, her voice icy, each word a cut. Sooner than I expected. Caleb braced himself against the wall, ignoring the stabbing pain in his chest, as if his broken ribs were piercing his lungs with every breath. Who's here? He asked, voice hoarse, struggling to suppress his fear. Sylra turned, her golden eyes blazing with gravity, like molten forges. Those who see both humans and exiles like me as worthy of death. She gathered her gear with astonishing speed, a curved, razor-sharp dagger, a small glowing device shimmering like a star, and a few packets of strange, metallic material. Every movement was precise, honed by countless battles. She slung a small bag over her shoulder, her gaze flicking to Caleb. Can you walk? If I don't want to die in this cave, I can. Caleb replied, gritting his teeth, forcing himself upright despite his swollen ankle, each step like walking on thorns. He clung to the rough stone wall, breath labored, sweat streaming down his face. Sylra didn't wait, striding out of the cave, and Caleb staggered after her, the blinding glare of the alien sun stabbing his eyes like a knife. The planet's terrain unfolded before him, harsh and unforgiving, jagged mountains like monstrous teeth, red dust swirling in the dry wind, and deep chasms, as if the planet had been torn apart from within. No trees, no signs of life, only stone and endless desolation. Sylra led the way, moving with deadly precision, her wings folded tightly to avoid hindrance, each step light but swift, like a shadow. Move faster, she urged, her voice devoid of emotion. They'll fan out from your crash site. If they catch us, there's no second chance. Caleb panted, the pain in his ribs threatening to tear him apart. I've got 2 broken ribs, he growled. Not to mention an ankle swollen like a balloon. You think I can run a marathon? Sylra glanced at him, her eyes cold, devoid of pity. The hunters won't care about your injuries. They'll slit your throat before you can whimper. Her words were a slap, but they ignited a fire in Caleb, adrenaline surging, forcing him onward. The roar of engines echoed from afar, a mechanical growl like a metallic beast. Caleb's heart pounded, threatening to burst from his chest. Sylra yanked him behind a massive boulder, her grip so strong he nearly fell. Her body pressed against his, shielding him completely, the warmth of her metallic skin radiating, carrying a strange scent, like heated metal mixed with something natural, wild, indefinable. Though an enemy, her presence was strangely captivating, like a flame he couldn't look away from. A patrol ship glided overhead, its sleek hull gleaming with pale purple light, identical to the warships that destroyed Aurora Dawn. Its searchlights swept the ground, slow and methodical, like a hunter's eyes seeking prey. Varkis' squad, Sylra whispered, her body taut as a bowstring, her wings trembling faintly, ready to unfurl. They hunt by heat. One wrong move, and they'll see us. Caleb tried to still his breath, his heart pounding so loudly he feared it might betray them. He felt Sylra's warmth, her hot breath grazing his ear as she whispered, "Don't move." He froze, sweat dripping down his temple, as the searchlight crept closer, grazing the boulder shielding them. The beam lingered above, a second stretching into eternity, time itself seeming to halt. Caleb held his breath, clutching a rock, ready to fight despite knowing he stood no chance. Then the light moved on, the patrol ship gliding away, vanishing beyond the rugged horizon. Sylra released him, rising with a warrior's agility. "Close," Caleb muttered, struggling to stand, pain forcing him to grit his teeth. "Too close," Sylra replied, her golden eyes flashing, gathering her gear with unwavering speed. "We need to reach my sanctuary. It's safer, but the path is long, and they won't stop hunting." Caleb wiped sweat from his brow, steadying his breath. "Who's Varkis?" he asked, voice trembling, not just from pain but from the need to understand the enemy who'd taken everything. Sylra paused for a moment, her eyes darkening, as if painful memories surfaced. "The one behind the attack on your ship," she said, her voice hardening, each word carved in stone. "He was once my ally, a respected warlord. Now he's my enemy, a power-hungry tyrant who seeks war with humanity to cement his place in the Voryn Council. He won't stop until every obstacle, you, is erased." Caleb saw a flicker of pain in her golden eyes, a crack in her perfect armor. But she quickly turned away, gesturing for him to follow. "Move," she said, her voice sharp again. "If you want to live, don't dawdle." Caleb limped after her, each step a battle, but her words echoed in his mind. Reluctant allies, he thought, watching her back, her wings folded but ready to strike like blades. He didn't trust her, not yet, but in this brutal world, she was his only chance at survival. And though he hated to admit it, something in her pride and strength held his gaze, like a mystery he was compelled to unravel, even if it cost him his life. Darkness cloaked the alien planet, broken only by the faint glow of two misshapen moons casting their light across the rugged terrain, painting a scene of devastation. Caleb Monroe staggered after Sylra, each step a brutal challenge, the pain from his broken ribs and swollen ankle threatening to tear through his resolve. Icy winds howled through the rocky chasms, carrying red dust that clung to his skin and clothes, scorching his throat. Sylra moved ahead, her towering silhouette slicing through the shadows, her membranous wings folded tightly but trembling with each step, as if poised to unfurl at any moment. She didn't look back, but Caleb sensed her vigilance in every motion, like a predator ever ready for danger. He wanted to collapse, to let the pain consume him, but the distant roar of Varkis's patrol engines haunted his mind, driving him forward despite his body's protests. Suddenly, Caleb's leg buckled, his knee slamming into a jagged rock, blood seeping through his torn pants. He bit back a groan, but his body refused to obey. Sylra stopped, turning, her golden eyes flashing in the dark, devoid of pity but free of contempt. Without a word, she knelt, swiftly pulling from her pack a thin but sturdy cord and a shimmering fabric, seemingly woven from some strange organic material. With astonishing dexterity, she fashioned a crude stretcher, lifting Caleb onto it before he could protest. "You don't have to do this," Caleb whispered, his voice weak, a wave of helplessness rising within him. But Sylra didn't respond, only began dragging the stretcher across the treacherous terrain, her strength astonishing him. Her wings trembled faintly as she navigated large boulders, and the muscles beneath her metallic skin flexed, as if forged to conquer any challenge. The Voryn were indeed a fearsome warrior race, but her unexpected dedication baffled Caleb, a piece that didn't fit the brutal picture he'd been taught about her kind. They reached a hidden cave, concealed by shimmering reflective netting like spider webs and cleverly arranged rocks. Inside, the cave opened into a vast space, bearing the marks of long-term survival, a small humming power generator, stone carvings depicting floating cities among the stars, and a mix of handcrafted tools and scavenged technology, as if this were the home of a solitary survivor. Blue light from glowing stones embedded in the ceiling cast an ethereal but cold ambience. Sylra set Caleb on a soft but durable mat, then began tending his wounds with surprising gentleness. She tore a strip from her pack, applying a pungent, stinging salve that made Caleb wince as it touched his skin. "You could have left me," he said, watching her bandage his chest, her golden eyes focused but unreadable. "I'm a burden." "You are," Sylra replied, her voice even, her hands working with the precision of a skilled healer. "But I don't want to be alone anymore." The raw honesty in her words stunned Caleb, like a stone rippling a still lake within him. He studied her, noticing for the first time the delicate lines of her metallic face, not just the cold edge of a warrior, but a wounded pride, like a fire snuffed out yet still smoldering. "How long have you been exiled?" he asked, his voice softer, as if afraid to shatter the fragile moment. 487 cycles, Sylra answered, securing the bandage around his chest, her golden eyes darkening, pulled into a painful memory. "Nearly a year and a half, by human reckoning." She paused, her hand hesitating for a second, then continued. Caleb couldn't help himself, blurting, "Why?" Sylra looked up, her gaze piercing him, not with anger but with a profound sorrow. "I opposed Varkis," she said, her voice lowering, each word etched into the air. "He sought war with humanity to solidify his power in the Voryn Council. I had evidence of his schemes, falsified territorial violations, staged attacks to provoke conflict. But before I could present it to the Council, he branded me a traitor, and I was banished to this planet, where no one survives long." Caleb saw the pride in her stance, unbowed despite the harshness of her fate. She wasn't just a Voryn warrior, not just the enemy he'd feared. There was a story behind those golden eyes, one of loyalty and betrayal, of a soul fighting for what was right. "You're not what I expected," he admitted, his voice hoarse, the pain still simmering but no longer drowning everything. "I thought Voryn were beasts, bent on conquest and destruction." Sylra raised an eyebrow, a gesture almost like a smile, though her eyes remained sharp. "And Voryn think humans are weak, relying on machines to compensate for their frailty. Cowardly, easily manipulated, unworthy of respect." She paused, meeting his gaze. "Perhaps both sides are wrong." Caleb smiled, despite the pain, a weak but genuine smile. "Perhaps." She finished bandaging him, her hand brushing his arm as she tied the final knot, an unintentional gesture that sent a strange warmth through Caleb. Her eyes lingered on him, and in that moment, under the cave's dim blue glow, he saw more than a warrior. There was a strange beauty in her strength, in how she faced her fate without breaking. It was a beauty humanity hadn't taught him to recognize, a beauty of resilience and silent sacrifice. But the moment shattered as a low whine echoed from afar, like a patrol ship's engines. Sylra sprang up, her wings trembling, her eyes cold once more. "They haven't given up," she whispered, gripping her curved dagger. "Rest, human. We'll need strength to survive this night." The journey led Caleb, Monroe, and Sylra through a brutal landscape, where deep chasms scarred the desert like colossal wounds on the planet's surface. Subterranean thermal vents erupted sporadically, the air trembling with hisses and scalding heat, coating everything in fine red dust like dried blood. The alien sun, red and massive, hung in the sky, casting a murky light over the jagged rocks, offering no warmth, only highlighting the deadly desolation. Caleb trudged on, each step a battle against the pain of his broken ribs and swollen ankle, but he clenched his teeth, determined not to burden Sylra. She led the way, her towering form with its shimmering metallic skin glinting under the harsh light, her wings folded but trembling with each gust, as if sensing danger in the air. "We're heading for an ancient calms relay," Sylra said, her voice low and steady as they took cover behind a massive rock, shielded from distant eyes. "It belonged to a civilization extinct long before Voryn or humans existed. If we're lucky, it still works and can send a signal to your human alliance. But Varkis' patrols may be monitoring. One misstep, and there's no second chance." Caleb nodded, his breath labored, clinging to the rock for balance. He gazed at the desert, where steam rose from thermal vents, forming a thin mist that distorted the horizon. The thought of a signal reaching Earth, of surviving and exposing the truth behind Aurora Dawn's attack, was the only flame keeping him moving. Yet trusting Sylra, a Voryn, still gnawed at him. She was the enemy, or at least of the species that killed his crew. So why did she save him, dragging him through this deadly terrain? He shook his head, banishing doubt, and followed her, each step a defiance of fate. Night fell, frigid and merciless, the two warped moons casting a faint silver glow over a narrow chasm where they stopped to rest. Sylra kindled a small fire, its strange blue flames burning without wood, radiating just enough warmth to fend off the biting cold. But the peace shattered when a low growl rumbled from the shadows, jolting Caleb, his hand tightening around a wooden staff he'd scavenged. From the chasm emerged a predatory creature, a six-legged beast, chest-high, its gem-like skin glinting in the firelight, its razor-sharp teeth flashing. Its ember-red eyes locked onto them. Sylra drew her curved dagger, her wings unfurling for balance, her body taut, ready to fight. "Don't move," she whispered, her voice sharp. But the beast lunged at Caleb, so fast he reacted on instinct. He shoved Sylra out of its path, swinging his staff, striking the creature's head, staggering it with a pained screech. Sylra leaped forward, her dagger flashing, slicing through the beast's throat with lethal precision. Dark blood sprayed, and the creature collapsed, its final breath a guttural moan. Sylra whirled on Caleb, her golden eyes blazing with anger. "Why did you do that?" she snapped, her voice trembling with rare emotion. "I can protect myself. You nearly died for that reckless act." Caleb, clutching his bleeding arm where the beast's claws had grazed him, gritted his teeth. "Because I won't let an ally get attacked." He met her gaze, ignoring the pain. "You saved me, dragged me through this hell. I won't stand by and watch you get torn apart." Sylra fell silent, her golden eyes softening, as if his words touched something deep within her. Without a word, she knelt, tearing a strip from her clothing, bandaging his wound with unexpected tenderness. Her metallic hands moved deftly, and Caleb felt the warmth of her skin, a closeness that quickened his pulse. By the blue fire, with his wound tended, Sylra sat, her gaze lost in the darkness. "My home," she began, her voice low and distant, "was cities floating among the stars, where light danced on metal spires like eternal flames. Each day, we watched radiant nebulae, and Voryn children learned to fly before they walked." Caleb was drawn into her tale, the way her hands moved as she described it, the gold in her eyes no longer cold but filled with longing. "You miss it," he said softly. "Like you miss Earth." Sylra replied, her eyes meeting his, and as she tied the final knot on his bandage, her fingers brushed his hand, a gentle gesture that stirred his heart like a stray note in a storm. He wanted to speak, but the moment broke as a distant explosion shook the ground. Sylra sprang up, her wings unfurling, dagger gleaming. "They've found our trail," she said, her voice taut, eyes scanning the dark. "We must reach the relay before dawn, or all we've done will be for nothing." Caleb rose, gritting his teeth against the pain, resolved not to let her fight alone. Under the silver moonlight they pressed on, two lone figures in a hostile world, but for the first time, Caleb felt they were more than reluctant allies, something greater. At the calm's relay, a tarnished metal tower rose from the red desert, a forgotten relic amid howling dust storms. Its rugged walls, etched with strange patterns of an extinct civilization, hummed faintly under the pulse of subterranean thermal vents. Caleb Monroe, sweat streaming down his face, worked tirelessly at an ancient control panel, his fingers dancing over dust-covered keys, striving to awaken a system dormant for millennia. Faint blue light flickered from the screens, displaying encrypted data in a language he could only guess at. Pain from his broken ribs and swollen ankle gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside, his mind fixed on their only hope, sending an emergency signal to the Human Alliance. "I can't reach Earth directly," he muttered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "But if this system works, I can broadcast on the Alliance frequency. Just one chance." Sylra stood beside him, her wings folded but trembling faintly, as if sensing danger in the air. Her golden eyes scanned the room, from the shimmering crystal pillars on the ceiling to the narrow entrance, where the desert's red glow seeped in. "Hurry, human," she said, her voice sharp but betraying a trace of anxiety. Every second we linger, Varkis' patrols draw closer. Caleb nodded, his fingers moving faster, unraveling the ancient encryption with the patience of a scientist who'd analyzed countless mineral samples. Suddenly, a stream of Voryn military transmissions flashed across the screen, metallic symbols slithering like snakes in the dark. Caleb froze, his breath catching. This wasn't a random attack, he said, his voice trembling, his heart pounding as if it might burst. Varkis targeted Aurora Dawn deliberately. He falsified data to make it look like we violated Voryn space, justifying the attack. This was a planned conspiracy. Sylra leaned over the screen, her wings trembling with anger, as if rage burned beneath her metallic skin. That's Varkis' encryption signature, she said, her voice lowering, each word a blade. I recognize it. He used it to command his warships. She tilted her head, her golden eyes narrowing as an anomaly appeared. But something's off, there's a second signal, not Voryn. Caleb pressed on, his hands shaking as the data revealed a horrifying truth. The second signal came from a human alliance ship, bearing a high-level clearance code. No way, he whispered, his voice breaking, as if the tower's floor were crumbling beneath him. Someone in the alliance worked with Varkis, feeding him Aurora Dawn's location. My crew. Mara, they died because of a traitor among our own. Sylra placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare but powerful gesture, as if to pull him from the abyss of despair. We'll find the traitor, she said, her voice resolute, her golden eyes blazing with determination. But first we survive. Caleb nodded, swallowing his rage, focusing on saving the data to a small device from his escape pod. But before he could finish, a deafening explosion rocked the tower, dust and debris raining down. The roar of Voryn engines thundered closer than ever. They found us! Sylra shouted, yanking Caleb from the console as an energy blast obliterated the entrance, pale purple light flooding the room like hellfire. They dove into a narrow maintenance tunnel, the stone walls shaking under relentless attacks. Sylra led, her curved dagger gleaming, her wings folded to navigate the tight space. Caleb followed, each step a torment as pain flared from his wounds. The tunnel opened onto a ridge overlooking the relay, where Voryn warriors, their metallic skin and weapons glinting, swarmed the area like wolves. Patrol ships hovered above, their searchlights illuminating the desert. We can't keep running, Caleb said, staring at the open terrain ahead, his heart racing with adrenaline and desperation. Sylra pulled him into a shallow cave, their bodies pressed close in the cramped space, their breaths mingling in the dark. Wait for night, she whispered, her hot breath grazing his ear, carrying the strange scent of metal and something wild. Caleb felt her closeness, her metallic arm against his chest, her wings trembling faintly, as if reacting to the tension. In the darkness, he reached out, his fingers brushing her metallic cheek, feeling its strange warmth, smooth as polished steel yet alive. You're not a beast, he whispered, his voice trembling with uncontainable emotion. You're beautiful. Sylra froze, her golden eyes flickering with rare vulnerability, as if his words had struck a hidden wound. Humans are strange, she said softly, not pulling away, her gaze locked on his, searching for something in his soul. The moment shattered as a patrol ship's searchlight swept past, its pale purple glow piercing the cave. They're using thermal scanners, Sylra said, pulling him deeper into the shadows, her body shielding him. If they detect us, there's no escape. Caleb clutched the data device, the memory of her touch still burning in his mind, a small flame in the storm. They braced for a fight, but in his heart, a truth had taken root. Sylra was no longer just a reluctant ally. She was someone he'd risk his life to protect, whatever the cost. Outside, the Voryn engines grew louder, and the darkness was no longer a safe refuge. After escaping Varkis' patrol, Caleb, Monroe, and Sylra found temporary refuge in the ruins of an ancient civilization, hidden deep within a valley shrouded by towering cliffs. Massive stone pillars, rising like natural spires, jutted from the ground, their surfaces etched with intricate symbols that shimmered under the silver light of two warped moons. The swirling patterns, like rivers of frozen light, told a story no living soul could decipher. A biting wind howled through, carrying a whistling sound like the whispers of vanished spirits, making Caleb shiver, not just from the cold, but from the mystical aura enveloping the place. Sylra checked the entrance, her curved dagger gleaming, her membranous wings trembling faintly as her golden eyes scanned the darkness. "These are the remnants of the precursors," she explained, her voice low but tinged with rare reverence. "They ruled the galaxy before Voryn or humans existed. Their technology surpassed our wildest dreams." Caleb moved slowly through the ruins, awestruck by the craftsmanship, though time had left it in decay. Polished stone walls reflected the faint light, and shattered crystal pillars lay scattered, glinting like fallen stars. "Who built this?" he asked, tracing a spiral symbol, feeling the stone's coolness under his fingers. Sylra turned, her golden eyes gleaming in the dark. "No one knows for certain," she replied, her voice even but curious. "Only that they left such ruins across the galaxy, then vanished, as if erased in a moment. Their technology could harness the energy of stars, yet even that couldn't save them." Caleb studied her, noticing a flicker of contemplation in her eyes, as if she wondered whether the precursor's fate was a warning for the Voryn, or for humanity. Night fell, the planet's harsh cold seeping through Caleb's tattered clothes, making him tremble despite his efforts to hide it. Sylra kindled a small heater, using a glowing device to create a strange blue flame that burned without fuel, radiating gentle warmth. They sat close, the intimacy softening the air, as if the darkness and ancient ruins had carved out a private world where prejudice and war couldn't reach. Caleb watched Sylra, the firelight dancing on her metallic skin, highlighting the sharp yet graceful lines of her face. "Why did you become a geologist?" she asked, her voice soft, carrying genuine curiosity for the first time, as if she truly wanted to understand him. Caleb smiled, his gaze on the flames, memories of Earth drifting like a distant dream. "I wanted to understand the universe, not conquer it," he said, his voice low but firm. "My parents wanted me to be a politician, to climb society's ladder, but I chose rocks and minerals. They don't lie like people do, don't hide the truth with fancy words. Every stone tells a story of billions of years, and I wanted to hear those stories." Sylra watched him, her golden eyes glinting, as if seeing him in a new light. "Yet you feared what was different," she said, her voice gentle but sharp. "When you saw me, you reached for a weapon, ready to kill." Caleb bowed his head, shame rising. "I was wrong," he admitted, meeting her gaze, ignoring the lingering pain of his wounds. "Everything I knew about Voryn was propaganda, tales of bloodthirsty beasts obsessed with conquest. But you're not the enemy, Sylra. You're—" he hesitated, searching for words, then said, "a marvel." Silence fell, heavy but not oppressive, as if they stood at a threshold with no turning back. Sylra leaned closer, her golden eyes softening, revealing rare vulnerability. Caleb reached out, tracing the veins on her cheek, feeling the smooth warmth of her metallic skin under his fingers. "This is forbidden," she whispered, her voice trembling, as if wrestling with herself, but she didn't pull away. "We're both exiles," Caleb replied, his hand moving to her silver hair, soft as silk yet shimmering like starlight. "Who's left to forbid us?" Their kiss came slowly, a hesitant dance, then ignited with uncontainable longing. Her warm skin, the strange yet intoxicating taste, like heated metal mixed with wild winds, melted every prejudice, every barrier between human and Voryn. In the shadows of the ancient ruins, they found each other, no longer two opposing species, but two lost souls craving a place to belong. But the moment didn't last. A low whine echoed from afar, like a patrol ship's engines, and Sylra sprang up, her wings unfurling, her dagger flashing. "They're still hunting us," she said, her voice cold again, her eyes scanning the dark. "Get ready, human. This night isn't over." Caleb rose, his heart still racing from the kiss, but resolve burning within him. He gripped the device holding the relay station's data, knowing the truth about Varkis and the traitor in the Alliance was their only hope to stop a war. Looking at Sylra, He realized she was more than an ally, she was essential to this fight, and to his heart. Under the silver moonlight they left the ruins, ready to face any challenge, whether Varkis' army or the laws forbidding their bond. Morning light filtered through the stone crevices of the ancient ruins, the silver glow of the warped moons rousing Caleb, Monroe, and Sylra from fitful sleep. The air was frigid, seeping into their bones, but the warmth of Sylra's metallic body, close to him in the night, lingered like a vivid memory. They sat up, the ruined silence broken by the wind whistling through the carved stone pillars. Sylra gazed into the distance, her golden eyes complex, as if wrestling with a heavy decision. "I have something to tell you," she began, her voice grave, each word carefully measured. "I'm not just an exile." Caleb tensed, his heart racing, memories of Voryn treachery, tales of deception and cruelty, swirling like a storm in his mind. He clenched his fists, bracing for a truth that could shatter their fragile trust. "Who are you, Sylra?" he asked, his voice hoarse, eyes locked on her. Sylra took a deep breath, her wings trembling faintly, as if suppressing a wave of emotion. "I am Sylra Vethar, granddaughter of the last Voryn High General," she revealed, her voice low but proud. "Before her assassination, she entrusted me with an ancient device, a key to the Precursor's archive. If it falls into Varkis' hands, he could use its technology to annihilate the galaxy, reducing every planet to ash to cement his power." Caleb froze, as if the stone floor had cracked beneath him. He stared at her, processing the revelation. "You've been carrying that this whole time?" he asked, his voice trembling, not from fear but from realizing the burden Sylra bore alone. She nodded, pulling from her pack a small crystal, shimmering like a captive star, its inner light swirling like a miniature universe. "Varkis hunts me for it," she said, her golden eyes darkening. "Not just for opposing him, but for this key. He knows its power, and he won't stop until he has it, or I'm dead." Before Caleb could respond, a deafening explosion shook the ruins, stone dust raining down, and the roar of Voryn engines thundered closer than ever. "They've found us!" Sylra shouted, tucking the crystal away and gripping her curved dagger. "We must find the archive before Varkis reaches it. If we activate it, we can find evidence to stop him." Caleb nodded, adrenaline surging, dulling the pain of his wounds. They plunged deeper into the ruins, racing through dark stone corridors where glowing crystal pillars cast eerie light on walls etched with cryptic patterns. They reached a central chamber, vast and majestic, with towering crystal devices rising from the floor like radiant trees. Caleb rushed to a console, his fingers dancing over ancient symbols, using his scientific knowledge to activate the system. Crystal screens flared to life, displaying precursor recordings, resonant voices, not of any known language, carrying timeless power. The data confirmed Varkis' conspiracy, staged attacks, falsified records, and a name that chilled Caleb, Harlan Voss, a high-ranking Human Alliance senator who supplied Varkis with Aurora Dawn's location. "Betrayal," Caleb growled, fist clenched. "From my own kind." Sylra placed a hand on his shoulder, her golden eyes blazing. "We'll make him pay," she said, her voice resolute. But before they could save the data, another explosion rocked the chamber, and Varkis' warriors stormed in, their metallic skin and energy weapons glinting. Sylra fought with lethal precision, her curved dagger flashing, cutting through foes like a storm. Her wings unfurled, letting her glide through the space with terrifying speed, each strike a deadly dance. Caleb, no warrior, used his geological expertise to trigger ancient traps in the ruins. Pressing a wall symbol, he caused stone pillars to collapse, blocking paths and crushing enemies. But an energy blast struck Sylra, sending her crashing down, metallic blood seeping from a shoulder wound, shimmering like mercury in the crystal light. Caleb rushed to her, heart pounding, pressing his hands to her wound to stem the blood. "You have to take the key to the Alliance," Sylra gasped, her golden eyes fading, her trembling hand offering the crystal. "Don't let him win," Caleb roared, his voice breaking with rage and pain. "I'm not leaving you." He lifted her, ignoring his own wound's agony, her body lighter than expected but warm, alive. We're going to the Voryn settlement. They can save you. Sylra shook her head weakly, metallic blood staining his skin. They'll kill you, she warned, her voice nearly gone. Let them try, Caleb replied, his eyes burning with unshakable resolve. He stepped out of the ruins, carrying Sylra, the crystal safe in his pocket, and marched into the Red Desert, where Varkis' forces still lurked. Under a star-filled sky, he vowed to protect her, even at the cost of his life, for Sylra was no longer just an ally, she was the only light in his darkness. The Voryn settlement emerged in the red glow of dusk, a majestic maze of sinuous metal towers blending with the planet's rugged stone. The shimmering structures reflected light, creating a scene both beautiful and daunting, as if forged from a star's core. Caleb Monroe, battered and coated in red dust, carried Sylra in his arms, feeling her faint breaths against his chest. Metallic blood from her wounds soaked through the fabric he'd used as camouflage, but he gritted his teeth, pressing through the harsh desert. The crystal holding the precursor key rested safely in his pocket, and the archive's data, proof of Varkis' conspiracy, was the only flame keeping him moving. He whispered an ancient Voryn medical command Sylra had taught him, his voice hoarse but clear, as he stood before the settlement's massive metal gate. Voryn guards, their metallic skin and cold golden eyes wary, eyed him suspiciously, but the command triggered an ancient protocol, prompting them to open the gate, allowing him to carry Sylra to a healing chamber. Inside, the settlement was a different world. Voryn healers, clad in shimmering robes, worked with precision and dedication, using crystal technology to mend Sylra's wound. Caleb stood by, breathless, observing their culture, wall carvings depicting interstellar battles, bustling markets with gleaming goods, and a complex social order where each individual seemed to know their role. Their art, from sinuous metal statues to melodic tunes from crystal devices, exuded a beauty he never imagined from a species deemed savage. But his awe was cut short when a guard recognized he wasn't Voryn. His dust and fabric disguise was stripped away, and before he could resist, a booming voice roared, "This human is a spy." Varkis, towering and fearsome with dark metallic skin, strode into the healing chamber, leading an armed squad, his golden eyes blazing with fury. "He's poisoned Sylra Vethar to steal the crystal." Caleb was dragged away, his hands bound with cold metal cords, and thrown into a dark cell where crystal walls' faint light only highlighted his despair. He clenched his fists, thinking of Sylra, the crystal, and the data that could stop a war. In the shadows, he heard a whisper from a Voryn healer, grateful for his return of Sylra. Stealthily, she cut his bonds, murmuring, "Sylra needs you." Caleb nodded, his heart pounding, and slipped from the cell, resolved to confront Varkis. In the central hall, Sylra, recovered but weakened, stood before the Voryn council, elders in shimmering robes with piercing eyes. She presented the Precursor Archives recordings, her voice resonant with pride. "This human, Caleb Monroe, brings proof of Varkis' betrayal. He staged the attack on the human ship, falsified data to incite war, and hunted me to seize the Precursor key." The council wavered, murmurs spreading, but Varkis countered, his voice thundering, "It's a forgery. This human conspires with the Alliance to overthrow our people. Sylra's been manipulated." The Voryn crowd grew chaotic, suspicious eyes turning to Sylra. But a moment silenced the room. A holographic image flickered, and Harlan Voss, a high-ranking Human Alliance senator, appeared, his face pale but voice arrogant. "Varkis is right about one thing," Voss declared. "I worked with him, supplying Aurora Dawn's location to spark war, in exchange for control of the Epsilon 9 belt. But he failed, and now I'll ensure no one stands in my way." The image vanished, and the council erupted in outrage. They ordered Varkis' arrest, but he drew an energy weapon, its pale purple light flaring, aimed at Sylra. "If I can't have the key, no one will," he roared. Caleb, fresh from his escape, burst into the hall, heart pounding as he saw Sylra on the brink of death. Without hesitation, he leaped forward, shielding her, and an energy blast struck his shoulder, pain like fire searing through him. He collapsed, blood soaking his shirt, but his eyes stayed locked on Sylra, as if to say he had no regrets. Sylra roared, her wings unfurling, and with a precise strike of her curved dagger, she ended Varkis, the blade piercing his chest. He crumpled, metallic blood pooling, and the hall fell into stunned silence. Caleb fell into Sylra's arms, consciousness fading, but he saw her eyes, no longer a warrior's cold gaze, but those of a lover, filled with pain and resolve. "You can't die, human," she whispered, her voice trembling, her hands pressing his wound. Caleb smiled weakly, touching her metallic cheek. "I promise to stay," he rasped, before darkness claimed him. But in that moment he knew that, whatever their fate, he and Sylra had changed everything, not just for themselves, but for both species. Caleb Monroe awoke in a brightly lit healing chamber, the blue glow of Voryn crystal devices illuminating smooth metal walls, creating a space both cold and comforting. The pain in his shoulder had dulled to a faint numbness, thanks to advanced healing technology. He wasn't bound or imprisoned, which surprised him, but his heart raced as he recalled the final moment in the hall, Sylra's golden eyes, filled with pain and love, as he felt protecting her. He sat up, breath still labored, and saw her standing by a window overlooking the Voryn settlement. Sylra, now interim leader of her people, wore a form-fitting metallic suit, her wings folded but trembling faintly, as if reflecting suppressed emotions. Her eyes, when she turned to him, were no longer a warrior's, but warm and deep, like a radiant nebula in a night sky. "The council has exonerated you," she said, her voice low but tinged with rare relief. "You saved our people from war, Caleb. Varkis has been condemned, and Harlan Voss is wanted by the Human Alliance. You're a hero, though not Voryn." Caleb smiled weakly, touching his shoulder, where the wound still ached. "I'm no hero," he replied, his voice hoarse. "I just wanted to protect you, and the truth." Sylra stepped closer, her golden eyes softening, but a shadow crossed them, as if she wrestled with something. "My new role, leading the Voryn, even temporarily, complicates things," she said, her voice restrained, each word heavy. "Voryn law forbids interspecies unions. Our bond, it's impossible." Her words cut like a blade, though spoken with gentleness. Caleb's heart tightened, but he met her gaze without flinching. "When do you return to Earth?" she asked, turning away, staring at the Voryn city with its spires gleaming like metal flames. "A diplomatic ship is waiting," Caleb replied, standing, approaching her despite the twinge in his shoulder. "But I won't go, unless there's a reason to stay." His words hung in the air, a challenge, a promise. Sylra turned, her golden eyes locking onto his, and in that moment, they both knew they couldn't return to their old paths, not after what they'd endured, not after the kiss in the ruins, not after his sacrifice to save her. "Laws are slow to change," she said, her voice soft but carrying a fragile hope. "But they can," Caleb replied, stepping closer, his hand touching her metallic arm, feeling its familiar warmth. "We've already changed everything, Sylra. We can do it again." 3 days later, at the settlement's docking bay, where a human diplomatic ship hovered above the red stone, a Voryn elder, clad in shimmering robes with piercing eyes, approached Caleb. A crowd of Voryn and a few human diplomats watched, the air thick with curiosity and suspicion. "Caleb Monroe," the elder said, his voice resonant. "The council offers you the role of human ambassador to the Voryn, a bridge between our peoples. Sylra Vethar requested this." He tilted his head, his eyes glinting, as if aware of the deeper meaning. Caleb blinked, his heart racing, and then he saw her, Sylra, in her leader's attire, stepping from the crowd. But her eyes weren't those of a cold leader, they were the eyes of the woman he loved, filled with hope and resolve. "Laws on diplomatic alliances can be interpreted," she said, smiling, a rare smile that lit her metallic face. "It will take time, but we have time, Caleb." He stepped forward, taking her hand before the crowd, heedless of the stunned gazes from Voryn and humans alike. "I accept," he said, his voice firm, and the crowd murmured, but he didn't care. His hand tightened around hers, feeling the strength and warmth of her metallic skin, like a wordless vow. Later, on a high balcony overlooking the star-filled sky, sparkling like gems, Caleb stood beside Sylra, the cold wind lifting her silver hair. He touched the veins on her cheek, feeling their strange smoothness, and smiled. "I once thought you were the enemy," he admitted, his voice low, thick with emotion. "And now?" she asked, tilting her head, her golden eyes shimmering like stars. "Now I know beauty lies not in species, but in courage and truth," he replied, his hand brushing her hair. "You're both, Sylra. And I'll stay, even if it means facing the galaxy." They embraced under the stars, her metallic body pressed against him, her warmth banishing the night's chill. No longer human and Voryn, no longer scientist and warrior, they were two souls who'd found each other in the dark, defying every barrier. In the distance, the Voryn city gleamed, and the human diplomatic ship lifted off, carrying their message of peace. Caleb and Sylra, hand in hand, vowed to build a new future, not just for themselves, but for both species, where prejudice faded and courage led the way. Under the boundless sky they knew that, though the journey was long, they would never walk alone.